Hello, everyone. I'm so excited for this episode. I have the beautiful Sara on. Do you want to introduce yourself to our
Sure. Thank you so much
listeners?
for having
Thank you so much for
me.
coming on.
You're so welcome. I am Sara. I run an energy healing business called Sense of Self with a double S at the start. That's how you and I met, actually. You came for a
Yes.
session, well, multiple sessions with me.
Yeah.
And yeah, we really clicked and bonded. So yeah, run an energy healing session from my place in Bronte. Um, it's actually, I realized 2 years tomorrow is my anniversary. So I was like, what a nice
Really?
little full
Oh my,
circle.
2 years.
Yeah.
How crazy. I feel like
So
I feel like
crazy.
we'll jump into it, but for, like Sarah also has a podcast as well, which is basically like Sense of Self, like the name of her business. But I wait, there's so many things I want to ask you. I'm like, where do
I
I
know.
even
Also,
start?
how nice is it to chat to a
Oh,
person? Because I remember when you came for an energy healing session last time, I didn't realize you had a podcast, and we both didn't realize. And we were
yeah.
both talking about how we love solo episodes, but sometimes you're literally talking to like a brick wall,
It's
and it can be quite draining.
it's so hard
It wigs
and
you out because there's no feedback.
yeah, and a lot of the times I feel like for me, I'm like, am I making sense? Or as I'm
Yeah.
talking, that sometimes I find it hard to like get out of my head,
Yeah.
that I'm
Yeah.
like, but yeah, so like it's so much nicer to be able
Just
to like
bounce off someone.
bounce
Yeah.
off someone. But it's so funny, like you saying that you've had the business for 2 years, but obviously that has been such like an imprint in your life. Like when you kind of like reflect on yourself, like 2 years ago, can you like recognize the person that like started the business
Oh,
and kind of like your life pre that? Like I've listened to some of your episodes talking about how you got into like, the space that you're in now, but just kind of, in terms of like the audience, obviously they don't know how you even got into it.
yeah. I mean, should I start from the very beginning?
Yeah, I'm like, where do we even
I
start?
know.
Wait, okay.
Should-
Wait, yeah, maybe start from there and then I'll go because I've got another question in terms of like your childhood, which
Yes. Okay.
I feel like that also weaves into
Yeah. I
you
mean, should we
figuring
go?
out.
I mean, yeah.
Maybe let's do childhood.
Childhood. Yeah.
Yeah.
Talked
What,
about. Yeah.
what was like your earliest memories in you as like a child?
Me as a child, I was always the word like I always used to describe, which is such a commonly used word, or words, but black sheep. Like I always felt different, and like I just couldn't really understand why. I was always the black sheep of my family. Like even I didn't, in terms of spirituality, I didn't see spirits or anything like that, but I always was questioning things, like always, what is the meaning of life? Like I always knew there was like, even
Like
as a little girl,
sitting there being like,
yes. And I would love to daydream and just escape to like the stars. Like I feel like my mum would always say, you're so away with the fairy, Sarah, because I was just always a bit vacant. Like I was in a dreamland, and I loved, it's almost like I felt more comfortable living in my little dreamland than on the human realm, because I guess I did feel a little bit different on a soul level, on an energetic level. I always did feel super intuitive, and my mum always was just like, there was something about you, like you were so deep. I felt like I could always read people, almost like read their minds as a kid, even just by being in someone's presence. I was super energetically sensitive, as a lot of us are. I could feel other people's emotions and I would take them on. So I was quite an emotional little girl, lots of just big feels. So, and I loved magic. I did love, like when I reflect on my childhood, and it's beautiful because now I feel like I've come full circle with, connecting to that inner child. But I loved, my favorite TV shows were like Charmed and Sailor Moon and, Matilda, when she like moves objects with her mind. Like
oh
I
my
used to,
gosh.
yes.
Still to this day, I'm like the coolest thing ever.
Yes. And I just remember being like, I can do that. Or like, I feel like I can do that. I used to try. So yeah, now that I reflect on that part of my childhood, like magic, fairy tales, all of that stuff, which I think is kind of beautiful now, because I like to think I work with magic now and like, create magic with people. So yeah, childhood was always felt a little bit different, a little bit displaced from the world, not in like a woe is me kind of way, but just on an energetic level. Like, and I know a lot of people can relate to that feeling. And so I guess I didn't necessarily have the tools when I was younger to tap into my sensitivity. So I definitely closed it off as I got older, I guess just to fit in and to, I didn't want to feel so deeply and I didn't want to be different. So I can definitely recognize when I reflect back on my life that I didn't fully live in my truth as I got older, because I definitely shut off that intuitive side of myself. And it wasn't until I got older, I remember it was in high school, actually. I think I was about 15. And I remember that spiritual side of me always bubbled away under the surface, but I always would push it back down because I was like, I just want to fit in and I just want to, be normal, for lack of a better term. And I remember, I think I was in like 9th grade or year 9 and Googling my astrology chart. And I was like, I knew what time I was born. So I just typed it in one day. I'd never forget the day. It was on those old computers. I was in class. We were in like computer class.
Yeah.
And of course I was like doing something completely different because I was
always
didn't care what school was about. Yeah. And I typed it in and I remember reading my entire personality on this page. It was like one of those free astrology, like cafeastrology.com or something. And I just remember my jaw being on the floor. And that moment was so pivotal for me, because astrology is, so spiritual in itself and it is so empowering. And ever since then, I aligned my life with the cycles of astrology. And that was probably my gateway back into my spirituality. But not to say I jumped straight back in at that age, high school, young adult life. I definitely...
Kind of like the seed.
Planting, yeah, I feel like there was all these little seeds that were planted. Do you have much of a connection with astrology? Have we discussed this in our sessions? I always like to ask people what their signs are.
I think I know about it, but it's interesting because I feel like, because I've grown up Christian, so in some ways, I identify as being Christian and I take that on, but then I also believe in astrology, but it's not something that I grew up with. And so when my aunt is very spiritual, I think that I can even you just saying in terms of taking on other people's energies, I so relate to that. And I feel like it's only been in my adult life where I've delved into, I wouldn't say I'm the most person who's self-help and whatnot, but it's definitely something that I'm really interested in. It's only now that I'm actually understanding. I don't think I've gotten a grasp of it, of when you're someone who feels a lot, that a lot of the times it's not actually your energy that you're feeling.
100%.
It's actually other people's energy.
Yes.
And also in some ways, even whenever I've gone, for a session with you, I feel this deep empathy and support, but you're only able to have the capacity to do that by being able to feel other people's energy. But when you were younger and kind of having all the, swimming in this pool of energy, how were you able to just cope with these external feelings that you didn't even realize were external?
I think as a kid, and that's why I think this generation of children now are coming through, and they are such empaths and they are so sensitive. And I do, children cleanses and readings all the time. And these children, they remind me of me when I was younger, but my family didn't necessarily have the tools to nurture me through that. And that's okay. My soul chose, my parents to go through that journey and those lessons and to step into my power now. But I completely numbed myself, to be honest. That was my survival mechanism. I would disassociate a lot because I just couldn't handle feeling so deeply and facing everything that was going on, because I did feel like I could, there was just so much going on in my head. I'm a Gemini sun, so I'm very in my head. I'm an air sign, so very in the clouds.
I don't know too much about Geminis. I actually don't have that many Gemini in my life.
No.
The only Gemini that this is so funny, that I know is Emily Ratajkowski, and I really like that. And I'll be listening to her podcast and she'll be like, yeah, I'm a Gemini.
That's funny.
But yeah, I really don't have that. Actually, no, I've got one other Gemini friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, but very, it feels like they're very just cool and very just kind of chill,
I think with Geminis, weirdly, I'm surrounded by so many, my friends, my family. which is quite crazy when you think about it, because Geminis can be quite like, high energy. A lot, it's so funny. I was writing a list, when you do like your journaling and your life reflecting and your yearly goals, I always write a list of like people that inspire me. So whether it's like podcasters or vloggers or like my favorite like celebs and things like that as like expanders or like to look up to inspire me. All of them are Gemini. Every
Really?
single one. Okay, maybe like 90%.
Yeah.
But it makes me laugh because Geminis are rules like the voice and the throat. And I feel like the traits of Gemini are like communication, connection, making people feel like seen and heard and bringing people together.
Emily Ratajkowski is so good at that. I've
Totally.
read her book. It's called My Body.
Yes, I've read that. It's amazing.
So good. And
So
even on
good.
TikTok, like she used to have a podcast and then she stopped and I was like, why?
Yeah, she did. I loved her podcast.
Me too.
Yes. I love her like rawness and authenticity. Yeah, and unfiltered. Yeah, that's very Gemini. And you'll find that a lot of content creators, vloggers, podcasters, honestly, if you look up all your favorite...
Chamberlain is
she's a Gemini. Honestly, she's on my list. It's so funny. Do you know like Lauren Bostic? She does like the Skinny Confidential podcast. It's one of my favorites.
Maybe I've seen.
It's like Dear Media. She owns that brand. You've probably seen.
Okay, probably.
She's a Gemini as well. It's just funny. All my favorite podcasters are all Gemini.
It kind of feels like you guys are very fearless. Like when I look at say like Emma Chamberlain, who I also really like, and like Emily Ratajkowski, and even I've got a friend called Joe, and he is a Gemini. It feels as though like there's all these things that are happening, but you have the ability to kind of like own it, but also like keep just like going.
Yeah, I feel like we have the gift of the gab. Like we can just kind of talk our way through anything. I've always been like that since I was younger. My voice was always like my tool. But again, I think during those years where I kind of numbed myself and switched everything off and back to like picking up on other people's energies, I was literally just recording a solo pod about why it's so important to cleanse yourself, especially now just with the energies of the collective and everything that is going on. We are all absorbing it, and that's why we've all been through, the ringer in the last few months. Cleansing yourself is so important. I mean, I do it every day because I see clients and, it's not good for me to take on all that energy, but I have clients come to me all the time and they're like, I'm just feeling highly anxious and I don't even know why. And when I tune into the energy field, I'm like, it's not yours. And even I actually have only really started to recognize this drastically recently. But for example, I'll be feeling amazing because I'm in my own space. I'm at home. I'm like doing all my rituals. And then I'll go and get my eyebrows done. And all of a sudden I step into the eyebrow studio and I'm like, I feel really anxious. And I'm like, it's because of all the energy that's in that room. And I always tell my eyebrow lady, I like bring her Palo Santo. And I'm like, you need to cleanse the room because she feels really, she's like, I feel really anxious at the end of the day and I don't know why.
I can so
yes,
relate
and
to
don't you reckon
that.
sometimes you walk into a room and you're just, it's, our auras go out for meters. And so, we pick up. Yeah, so I think as a kid, I didn't have the tools. Now I do, and that's amazing. And, I can help others do the same. And hopefully when I have kids one day, I can help them cleanse and know how to reset their energy field. But yeah, my whole life, I've really, truly numbed myself. Like I just feel when I reflect on my teenage and young adult years, it wasn't until COVID, which I know we'll talk about, that I really slowed down. I was living in autopilot, in fight or flight, just to get by. I didn't really know myself, I think because I'd shut my true essence off from such a young age, for being ashamed for feeling different and not really knowing why I felt different. This is a common trend with a lot of sensitive people. You just kind of shut yourself off. I feel like it wasn't until COVID that I really slowed down and realized, hang on, I've been living on a hamster wheel for so long. That spiritual kind of part of my soul, or not even spiritual part of my soul. I feel like spirituality is just like, an embodiment and a state of being, but that side of myself finally got a chance to be reborn, and those layers of like numbness finally melted away, and I realized what I truly wanted and who I was to the core, I guess.
It's interesting you talking about like having moments of like disassociating and like numbness, because it wasn't until probably the last 2-3 years that I realized that was a thing. I know that sounds like so odd, but I used to listen to this other girl's podcast and she was like talking about it. And then I also realized that a lot of people like within our world and like environment, like, and it's interesting because I feel like as a collective or kind of like this new gen that we have like a resilience to kind of be like, okay, shit's happened, I'm just gonna like move on. But in some ways I get so conflicted because I'm so someone when I experience something or when something happens, I feel like in order for me to like fully move on, I need to like sit in it and experience it.
Yeah.
And then, but then also in saying that, it's like really hard because I don't like, obviously, no one likes feeling negative sort of energy. And so sometimes when I'm in it, sometimes, if anything, I can feel like potentially I give too much like power to it. And then say if I like switch onto TikTok, like some kind of social media, people are just kind of like, yeah, someone breaks up with you, whatever, move on to the next. They're like, yeah, you didn't get that job, whatever. Or like, I don't even know. Or like, you had that like trauma, who cares? Like, everyone's just like, you know, like whatever. What do you think is like, is that even a happy medium to, because I guess in some ways when we do disassociate, I think it's also like our body just protecting us.
Protecting us, yeah.
You know, so maybe sometimes it's actually not even like a bad thing, that like potentially in that moment, obviously depending on the level of like, you know, trauma and anxiety that you've experienced, that maybe in that moment, if you were to feel everything, like you just wouldn't be able to cope. But do you feel like there's like a happy medium of like when you are going through things to be able to like actually deal with it? Or is it like fine just shutting down for a bit? Which was
To
so
be honest,
hard.
no, I have strong opinions about this, and I feel like almost my energy healing sessions now have evolved to tackle this kind of not problem, I guess, but theme that is arising in people. So what I feel, and I did this my whole life, is I would push everything. I would sweep everything under the rug. I would be like, oh, it's fine, everything's fine. From such a young age, I would just push, suppress when something traumatic would happen. And if we don't feel it in that moment, it lives inside of us as dormant, stuck energy. And I know in our sessions, I think I've done it with you, where we will remove the emotion from the body somatically. That's probably my favorite thing to do in my sessions. And the most powerful thing, I do it on myself like a few times a week. But what I do is now, and I feel like now I'm almost, probably the last like 5 years when I've really been deep on my spiritual journey, I have had to deal with everything that I suppressed my entire life. It comes back to bite you. Like, you cannot run from it. And the more you suppress, the more it turns into anxiety, overthinking, gut issues, insomnia, autoimmune disease. Anything that you are keeping in your body is just blocking your chakras, blocking your life force energy. And that is why we feel so numb, and that is why we disassociate. And so now when I go through something, even if it's tiny, like minor, like I'll just get triggered during the day, my automatic response, my ego mind is like, okay, let's just push that down and pretend everything's fine, smile. And that can come after, but you must face the emotion, just sit with it. And it's not that you're giving power to it. I think giving power to it is actually beautiful in that moment, because then you're not holding on to it. It's gone. It's released. In that moment, what I'll do is I will just feel it in my body, find, you know, where it is. This is like the technique I use in my sessions, I guess. Breathe light into it. Send compassion and love to it, and just hold myself with grace, and then let it go, and try not to attach a narrative to it. I feel like our ego mind is always trying to attach a story to the feeling. The feeling is just, you know, memory from that time where something has happened before similar, that it's just having that similar effect in your body. Like, your body's remembering and that feeling is coming up. The more we push that down, it's just this build up, it's this compounding, and all of a sudden you explode, you have a nervous breakdown, you feel, you have a panic attack and you don't know why. So that's why I love holding space for people to gently release whatever. It's usually rooted in some sort of fear, or fear of not enough, or fear of rejection, or fear of abandonment, or whatever it is. I believe sitting with it, letting it go with grace and forgiveness and compassion, and it's gone. And then I move on, and then I'm like, oh, that's fine. It's not stored in my body. It's not making me sick. It's not going to, anything that we store subconsciously ends up driving our life it's like this subconscious steering wheel, this wounded inner child, this wounded teenager, this wounded whoever is living inside of us, driving our behaviors, our habits, you know, the things we do subconsciously, the little impulsive things that we do that sometimes you're like, why do I do that? Or like, you know, being so self-aware sometimes is annoying, because even when I say something, I'm projecting. You know, when you say something and you're like, I'm projecting. Why did I even say that?
All the time. Yeah, like I'm always like, what?
Being hyper self-aware, it's great, but it's also like exhausting.
Feels like it bites you.
Totally. Like I'm always psychoanalyzing myself from a like external POV looking in. I'm like, sorry, you're projecting. But I also think that's a superpower as well, because I have, you know, we have the tools to be self-aware. It's amazing. But I think that, yeah, the more we can face what's sitting with us, like what is living in there, and deal with that dormant energy that's just laying there, we free ourselves, we free our bodies, we free our minds, our nervous system, our health, our gut. Yeah, me having emotional releases from moments in my past and going back there and reliving it and releasing it in a beautiful, safe space has completely changed my life, my health, my mind. Like I used to be such an overthinker when I was a child. Like I'm not joking. There would not be a moment where I would have silence in my mind. Like there would be a constant. And I used to be like, oh, everyone's like this. Like, isn't everyone like this? And some of my friends would be like, no, I don't have a constant internal monologue. Like psychoanalyzing every single moment of the day. And I'm like, what? Are you the same? Or can you relate?
I can relate. And I think as well, I feel like I'm in this new phase of my life, and even, you know, meeting people like yourself and just going to like therapy more like, you know, continuously, that I think I'm trying to like bring more of a sense of like ownership to like who I am, and kind of like my like intuition and like trusting that, because I feel like a lot of the times, like growing up, I've always been someone who was like so sensitive, and I couldn't understand, like for me, like how everyone felt like they just existed and they just moved.
And you're like, why do I feel things like, so deeply?
And them just like move so freely, and and I'd always be like, wait, but like, why is it that I literally need to like, and I obviously could still do things, but constantly I would be like, why is it that I literally need to like sit for like an hour to like, and we'll think about this and be like, but what do you think they meant when they said this? And then be like, but what were they feeling, you know? And I think in some ways that sometimes when I've tried to communicate to people how I'm feeling, or kind of like just try to send a message, that because a lot of the things is like feeling based, I find it hard to like find words to kind of like action out like what, or like to make sense of it, because everything just feels like it's just kind of like energy. And so then I kind of feel like I didn't really trust that. Like I wasn't trusting the like intuition and like the energy. And then now kind of like working on things to be like, no, you're not like weird because you like hypothetically maybe are more of a feelings based person than like say being able to like, you know, logically rationalize things, that it's like, no, I still have like power in that, and it's still like a different kind
and
of
it's
message.
Just superpower. And our ego mind tries to label everything else has a story. And I think, you know, being such a deep feeler when you were younger was often frowned upon, and that's why we did shut it off. And I feel like now humanity is almost having this beautiful full circle moment where all those empathic children who were told, you know, you're a crybaby, you're too sensitive, like, you know, just deal with things. And
I already cried when I saw Sara.
I cry all the time.
I know.
I will cry literally watching an old lady walk down the street. Oh my god.
But I was gonna ask, so when you got out of school, what was like your career path, and how did you just kind of like keep things moving? Because obviously you saw like the astrology chart, and with that it was like, actually, did you talk about the astrology chart? Or like with that, it was saying that you had like a lot of like spirituality and like wellness and...
I think now that I reflect on the astrology, that pivotal moment, it was because I had shut my true essence off for so long, that reading that chart about myself and this is what I love about astrology in general, or human design, or anything where you learn more about yourself, is it's so empowering, because even those shadows or those dark sides of yourself, or those sides that you're not necessarily, you may have been ashamed of, like I'm too loud or I'm too enthusiastic, you know, I was so, yeah, I am quite like, I get really passionate about things, and I feel like you're the same. And it's all those little aspects of your personality that sometimes you're like, oh, why am I like this? Maybe I'll tone that down to fit in. And my astrology chart was just like this beautiful just imprint of like who I am. And then it's empowering in that moment, because it's like, this is who I am, and there's nothing, I mean, not nothing I can do about it. Obviously we have low vibration and high vibrational sides of our personality, but yeah, it's just very freeing. I felt, and very liberating, of like, you know, this is why I do that, or this is why I can get so passionate about this, or why I talk a lot, or whatever it is. And so I think that was just a beautiful breadcrumb that led me on the journey to finding myself and my rediscovering my sense of self, which is why I, you know, called my business that name, because my journey of life has truly been like rediscovering my true sense of self. When I left high school, my parents never pressured me into uni or anything like that, but I was quite academic. Like I love school, love learning. That's another trait of Geminis, is like we love learning. I could literally do a course every single week. I absolutely love it. So I was quite a studious gal, and did my exams. Wanted to go to uni just because I wanted to keep learning and didn't feel like going straight into the workforce. And I just chose commerce because that's what a lot of my friends, you know, chose, because we, you know, it was such a broad thing.
Is that like economics?
It's like business.
Business.
Yeah, so business, and then you choose your majors. So you can major in economics, real estate, like property, marketing, PR, that kind of thing. Yeah. And I chose marketing and PR as my majors because I was quite a creative. You know, it's funny, I was listening to your podcast the other day of your journey into modeling, and when you said you loved FTV, FTV was like my Roman Empire. Like I cringe. I was a little girl, and I would have Foxtel, I would have FTV
all the time.
For anyone who doesn't know, it's fashion TV, and it's basically just a runway of constant models.
Literally, I don't think they have it like now.
No,
but even if they had it now, I feel like it just wouldn't be.
It wouldn't land.
Same,
yeah,
you know? Like
it was like the Kate Moss era.
Yeah, it had like 2000s, like nostalgic vibe, and even like all the runways would have like this like faded sort of like tone, you know, and they would go backstage. And I also used to love when the models would take people to their agencies and be like,
yes,
and then ask them like,
stuff.
what do you prefer, runway or shoots? Like,
I died for FTV. Yeah, so my dream was always to work in fashion PR. I think a lot of young girls, I always would see like The Devil Wears Prada and all those movies, and I'd be like, PR is me. So I did marketing PR at uni. I absolutely loved it. I did a few internships at PR agencies with fashion, and I didn't love it, to be honest. It was very cutthroat, and, you know, you end up just getting coffee. You know, I don't know. It didn't
I
feel...
I can relate. Yeah.
You did it at Bazaar. That's right. Yeah.
It's just like,
You feel like the bottom of the food chain, basically.
And I was like, maybe this is not for me.
Totally. And I think a lot of young girls go through that, where it's like this dream. I was like, I want to live in New York and I want to work for Vogue. And then I was, you know, hit with a reality check. And to be honest, after that, I loved uni. I graduated. I actually I was going to say got lucky, but I don't think anything is luck. I feel like it was all destiny. But I knew a few people that worked at a radio station, one of the popular radio stations in Perth, or it's a national station. And they were looking for a receptionist. And I remember getting offered 2 jobs. It was this marketing job at a really boring like tech company, or receptionist at this radio job. And I was like, they told me at the radio job, you can be on reception for like 6 months and then we can promote you into the marketing team. So I thought, you know what, other than fashion, I loved music and pop culture, and I still do. Just fun. I was such an outgoing extroverted. Now I'm a bit more reserved, but back then I was just, you know, all in. And so the radio felt so aligned. And yeah, I ended up, that was kind of like the start of my real journey of self-discovery. So I worked at the radio station, loved it, very fun. I loved to like party and go to all the events and the concerts. Like I was like, this is a dream come true. Like you know, and I do look back on that period of my life so fondly, and I feel so blessed. I ended up working in the Perth office. I was on reception for about 6 months, worked my way up into the advertising team, which I loved, was there for 3 years, and then moved to Sydney. So then I always wanted to move to Sydney. It was just always, when you can't explain, there's always a calling. I always felt in Perth that there I was not living my full potential. A lot of people in Perth, it's like small town vibes. They move to Melbourne, London, Sydney. It's like the standard thing. If you just feel like you have more to give. I was just even as a child, I was like, there's more to life. Like, there's always more to life. There's got to be more to this. I never fully resonated with like the systems and the structures of humanity. And I still, don't now, of like, this is the way to live, that kind of boring 9 to 5. I always just was like, I want more for myself. So that kind of led me to Sydney. It all happened quite serendipitously, and they had a job come up in Sydney, which was like events and client entertainment. And so cool. And I was
feeling very did you ever watch like The Hills, the series?
Yeah.
Feeling very like Lauren Conrad. Yeah. Like you basically were like living like your teenage dream.
Dream, totally. And I remember thinking, this job is so surreal, because I just moved to Sydney. I was young, I was single, and I got to go to every event. I remember my first day on the job, my first day in the Sydney office, my manager said to me, and this is how I knew, I was like, I'm exactly where I need to be. I was like crying. She was like, we've got the Fleetwood Mac concert is tonight. Would you mind hosting the clients in the box? And Fleetwood Mac is my favorite band in the entire world.
Would you mind?
She was like, would you mind? I was like, it's my first day on the job. Like, I've got to host 12 clients. Like, what?
And you're like, what?
Yeah. I was like, I think I'm free.
I think I could sort something out. Oh my God.
I was like, this is heaven. And I remember being in that concert. I'll never forget, like, one of my favorite songs was on, and I started crying because I was just like, this is it. Like, this is the beginning of my journey. And I just felt so divinely supported in that moment, because Fleetwood Mac was my favorite. I was like, wow, I can't believe I've got this job. I felt so lucky. My job really consisted of events, wining and dining clients. So I got to try every Sydney restaurant under the sun. We went on boat parties in the Sydney Harbour. It was crazy. I mean, it was beautiful because I got to see Sydney all for free, and just, it didn't feel like work. I felt like I was on vacation pretty much. And I never took that for granted. I always am someone that is always extremely grateful for what I have. Like, I never take anything for granted. And I remember just being like, wow, pinching myself. However, I was a mess, like, internally. I was a shell of a human. I was running on 4 to 5 hours sleep a night, terrible diet, drinking, I was, just
do you
a mess.
Think in those moments that you could tell that, like, inside you kind of needed to, like, replenish, like, your sources? Or do you think because you were moving so quickly that you didn't even have time to actually, like, admit that to yourself?
It wasn't until later. It wasn't until COVID hit 2020. I never forget.
So crazy.
I mean, not to sound insensitive, but COVID was, I look actually back at that time fondly for myself in terms of my life path, not obviously the circumstances of COVID, but I worked in events, obviously, and we couldn't do events anymore. So I thought I would be made redundant, but it turns out we did online events and things like that, and we pivoted. But I remember just slowing down and sitting at home every day. We worked from home. I went from working in the office 5 days a week. I would work till like 10 o'clock at night, because I was always doing planning for the events. I would always be at events. And I loved it. I thought I loved it that way. My gut, my hormones, everything was completely ruined. I didn't realize this until later. COVID, I slowed down, and I just realized, oh my God, my nervous system didn't know what to do with itself. Like, I was in shock for a while. I was like coming down from this high. I just had time to take a good hard look at myself, and just, it was a lot of introspection and like, who am I? Because I felt like I truly didn't really know who I was, because I was just living this on this hamster wheel, just living this. It was totally on the outside. It was this fun, incredible, out of the ordinary circumstances, and life was amazing. But deep down, I didn't feel connected to myself. Like, I was so shut off from my body. I was living in complete survival mode and running on empty. My tank was completely empty. And that's when I started filling my tank, or filling my cup, with walks in nature. I was like, oh my God, I have time to go for a walk, because
Yeah.
I would work Monday to Friday, never exercise or, do anything other than go to the office, because I didn't know any better. And then on the weekends I'd go out and party, and then Sunday I'd be hungover. And then I lived with 2 girlfriends. We were all single, so we just, went wild, as you do when you first move to Sydney. And so I was just caught in this vicious cycle, never had time, never journaled, never read, never watched TV. I'm talking like nothing for myself, completely living from external validation and circumstances, and that would determine my life path. Like I was at the mercy of everything else. And that's when I started journaling. I started getting back into my astrology. I started getting my tarot cards and my crystals, and just totally slowing down. And that was when I realized this is actually who I am. And this was who I was when I was a little girl. I've been living in a trance. Like I've just not been living in my true authenticity. And yeah, it just really was this huge awakening. I would say that was like and after that, when I awokened to that soft, slow life, I was living such in my masculine energy in my corporate job, which a lot of us are.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah,
no,
I was not in my feminine whatsoever.
Oh my God, I can so relate to that. Like I think for me, I think at the heart that I'm so like divinely feminine.
Yes.
But obviously we all have the feminine and masculine within us. But something that I struggle with is even with me, with like the line of work that I do, that the world kind of praises you to be in your masculine. And
100%.
so it's like, how do you even, like, I know that like, divinely feminine energy is amazing in terms of introspection and slowing down, but then also trying to like live in this world, and like have that. So like, I can so relate.
Yeah,
I don't blame you.
And I
It's
actually,
always like a battle.
yeah, it's like you're finding this dance between the masculine and the feminine. Now I'm so far in my feminine that I actually struggle sometimes to get back in my masculine, and be productive and do things, because I'm like, I just want to float in the woods and like sit by a stream. And I'm like, oh, whoops, I need to actually do work and like get shit done. But I was so in my masculine, and then I started tapping into that softness, that femininity, that slowness. I remember just reconnecting with nature, doing things that brought me joy. And I didn't know what that was. If someone had asked me, who are you? What are your hobbies? How do you describe your personality before that? I honestly don't know what I would have said, because my identity was work, and my identity was placed so outside of myself. My worth was completely at the mercy of external validation and circumstances.
I can relate to that.
Yeah.
It's something that I think about all the time, because I feel like, I don't know, like I think growing up and being like influenced by so like much media, which I think it's not a bad thing, but like I was constantly like watching girls, like The City, The Hills, like FTV, that you kind of, like for me, that was somewhat of like an escape, because like when I saw those like, media forms and like those girls, it felt like, it was like, well, they were like that's living apparently, you know?
Yeah.
But then when you actually, I think COVID, that was one of the biggest themes that I heard, that so many people had this moment where they were like, wait, what am I outside of work? Like if I take that away, who am I, And it was really scary and a bit confronting.
It was confronting, and I think a lot of people didn't want to sit with themselves. We keep ourselves distracted because we're running from ourselves and our wounds and our pain. And I had to sit with everything, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because that's how, I don't think I'd be doing this line of work right now if I hadn't gone through that. After that, when we went back to work, it wasn't the same. Like it was past the point of no return. I was like, I've seen the light. I can't go back to this prison, like this robotic, and sorry, not shitting on anyone who is, working in the corporate world, but my soul, one of the themes of my like astrology chart and when I do my human design and everything is freedom. And anything that stunts my freedom, I get immediately no, like it's a whole body no. Like I can't, even now in my life, I'm like, if it's not freeing to me, I can't do it. And once I got a taste of that freedom, I couldn't go back. And I remember going back to work after that, and it wasn't the same. It felt wrong. I wasn't on the same vibration. And it's that vibrational match, don't you think? You've outgrown something, whether it's a friend, a relationship, a home, a way of being, a job, is because you feel it in your body, in your gut. It feels like a vibrational off. I'm quite an optimistic person. Like I always wake up, I like to see the bright side of life, always like glass half full. So when I wake up in the morning, I love to go about my day, make my matcha, go out in nature. And when I was at my corporate job, I would always be excited to get to go to my job. As soon as I notice that's gone, I know that my guardian angels are like, this isn't right for you anymore. And I think a lot of people struggle to discern what feels right and what doesn't. And they think that those anxious feelings at work is something wrong with them. It's not. It's your guardian angels pushing you out.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people struggle with that because they don't trust their intuition.
That's so interesting. Could you explain to us when it comes to like what are like guardian angels? Like who are they and how do they, feed into your intuition? Because obviously it's more of like an internal, sort of thing. Like how do you make sense of that?
Look, my interpretation, just based off readings and tapping into people's light worker team and spiritual team, is the way I see it is we all have our spirit team, our light worker team, whatever you want to refer it to, and it is full of guides. And our guide, and you can do meditations where you like meet with your guides. I've met with mine before. Sometimes they change, so we can have different guides for different periods of our life. I've met some along the way. Like I have this whimsical feminine lady, and then I have this more masculine military lady who helps me get shit done. Yeah, like come on, Sara, get out of bed. We have our guides, and our guides help us with different phases of our life. And we can have like galactic beings in our spirit team. There's no limit to who you have on your team. Angels, I believe, come to us when we are in deeper need. So if you're going through something challenging, and you really just need that extra emotional support, that's when I feel that angels will come in. They're always there if you call on them, but the guides are our little like puppet masters. The guides are who give us that gut feeling, and also our higher self. So I always visualize like the highest version of me, my highest consciousness, like this golden, it's like me, but with like a golden light around me. And that's who I talk to when I ask, for guidance and I need to tune into my intuition. I always be like, what's my higher self telling me? And then past loved ones. So past loved ones act as our angels, and they're always with us like our guides. And that's just from me speaking. I'm a medium as well. So by speaking to people's loved ones, they are always with us. The thing about our spirit team and our angels though is it's important to ask for help and pray. So I love every morning I like pray. I literally get on my hands and knees, like my little ritual, because
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I think we forget that it's all right to ask for help.
Well, yeah, because I love this analogy. So we have free will, right, as humans. They won't intervene unless we ask, because it's like, for example, a mother and their child. You have to let your child make mistakes, and you'll intervene if they are. I mean, most parents that are emotionally aware will do this. Some parents are controlling and like to, overtake their child's lives. But basically, it's like a mum. You've got to let them make the mistakes. You've got to let them, unless they ask for your help. So that's why I stress this in all of my sessions to all of my clients. I'm like, ask. I cannot tell you. The relationship I have with my spirit team is like a group of friends. Like I will ask them for anything and everything. I will ask for their support, their guidance, help me make this decision, send me signs. You and I speak about signs and synchronicities. Once you start to notice them, I always thank them. Thank you so much. I see you, I hear you, I feel you. Whether you feel it, whether you see it, you form this beautiful relationship. You never feel alone. You always feel guided. And yeah, that's kind of the role of our angels and our spirit team. And I believe our gut feelings are our guides, our higher self, our guardian angels, our past loved ones, planting that feeling in our body. You can feel it when it's in your gut, it's in your soul. That's them guiding us on this beautiful golden thread of our life. It's when we resist that and we live in our heads is when we can. There's no right or wrong, there's no right or wrong direction. If you take a quote unquote wrong direction, you just will repeat the same pattern. You learn another lesson. You repeat the same cycle again and again until you choose the higher path and you listen to that. And I think now a lot of us are learning how to trust that and how to use that as a compass. Like my intuition now is, and I never lived in my intuition at all. Like I was so erratic, so impulsive. I would make decisions based on what I thought I should do, what other people wanted me to do, what would make me likable. Now I completely, my intuition is my compass. Like it guides me through life. I will always just feel in, how does this feel in my body? This decision, is it a yes? Is it a no? Is it a maybe? Okay, I'm going to leave it until it is a yes. Like whatever it is, something I love to do in my sessions with my clients is teach people how to use that intuition. And if they can't access it, that's where I come in and remove the blocks. So the way I visualize our energy field is we have these blocks of emotions that we haven't processed throughout our lives, and they block our chakras and they block us from accessing our intuition. So if we can clear that, a message I often get from people like the day after our session is, I feel so much lighter and I feel clearer, and now it's like I know what to do now. And it's because we've removed that layer, we've removed that armor, that block that's kept you in survival, kept you in your head. And yeah, that intuition is, I always say, if you follow your intuition, you cannot fail. It is a foolproof plan. The universe is always working for us. If you follow your heart and your intuition, you absolutely cannot fail. And that's why when people come to me and they're like, I've got this dream to do this creative project, but I'm scared it's not going to work out. And I'm like, if you've got that in your heart, you cannot fail. Like the universe will move mountains. And it took me a long time to get to that, because obviously leaving my corporate job and starting my spiritual business, I had so much fear. I didn't live in that philosophy of everything is happening for me and living in my heart. I had to kind of, that was in the moment where I saw other energy healers and practitioners that guided me on that path, because I needed that external help. And now I like to give that back to people because of how much they helped me.
That's so interesting. I feel like I always hear the saying as well, like, the universe is working for you.
Life is happening for you, not to you. Yeah.
But I remember listening to an episode of yours and you spoke about like the first time you had someone significant in your life pass away, which I think was your granddad.
Yeah, my nono.
Yeah, and now he's like part of like your spirit team, like one of like your angels. Like when, say, something, I don't know what the word is, but just something so sad happens in life, and you kind of like trying to make like sense of it. Like how were you able to, I guess, not let the passing of someone floor the way that you view the world, but more as something to kind of like move with that energy, and then also now like being able to still carry like your granddad with you. Sorry, there's like a lot of questions.
No, I know what you mean. Yeah. To be honest, I think because I was such a deep thinker as a child, and I always just trusted that there was something more to this human experience, I've never been scared of death. Like death's never scared me, and I've just always had this innate knowing, even as a child, that loved ones, when they pass, they're always with us. Maybe that's like a past life remembering or something that I have, but I'd never had anyone close to me pass away until that year. I remember it was 2016, and I remember it being like I was so young and chaotic, and I hadn't tapped into my intuition and spiritual essence then, but I was very much in victim mindset, and I'd gone through my first like proper heartbreak. And I remember just being like, this is the worst year ever. Life is out to get me. The universe hates me. I don't know. Yeah, I'd never experienced that heartbreak, and I'd never experienced death. Life is lifing. Yeah. Heartbreak and death all together. And I remember boom. It was all within a few months. Yeah. And I just remember being like, the universe is like kicking a dog while it's down. My grandpa passed away. He was sick for a long time. He was 90 something. So I wasn't like, oh my God, I can't believe he passed. I'm usually very at peace with, old people when they pass, because it's like, they've lived a beautiful life. Let's celebrate. But my nonna was a beautiful, beautiful man. I was really close to him. And I remember, he passed. I had just gone through the breakup. I remember being like, could this year get any worse? In my fragile state, I booked in with this fortune teller lady in Perth. She was like quite known famously for like being so incredible. And I booked in with her because there's quite a few periods in my life where, in those moments of desperation and guidance, because I didn't know how to access my intuition, I would lean on external, practitioners, which turned out to be amazing, because the guidance that they provided me was, invaluable and shaped the path of my life. But I never forget this lady. I booked in with her because I was like, oh my God, like, I've gone through this breakup, I've gone through this death. I had a strong calling to book in with her. Booked in with her, and I remember she cancelled on me 3 times. And I remember and this is quite common for spiritual practitioners. I don't, because I don't know, I'm very like loyal and organized, and I don't like canceling on people unless I'm not feeling well or something. But a lot of like super witchy woo-woo practitioners, they'll often either just not reply to you until the time feels right for them, or they will cancel on you willy-nilly and just be like, come back another time, because it's all divine timing. Like everything is divine timing. And so even when you book in to see me in that moment, that's divine. Like, you know, it has to be, even us doing this podcast today, right? Like Cynthia reached out to me, 5 weeks ago saying, Sarah, I'd
because
love to.
I'd done a session last year with Sara, and it was kind of weird how I came to you, like at that specific time.
In desperation, right?
Yeah. But it was like, because I have like a friend who had seen Sara, and then I randomly just got on a walk with that friend when I was like going through these things last year, and she had mentioned you, but things hadn't actually hit the fan for me. She just mentioned you in passing by, and I was like, oh yeah, that would be really cool. And I remember looking at your Instagram, and then everything like hit the fan for me.
Yes.
And I said one of those like, if any sessions end up like cancelling, please let me know. The like desperation.
Yes.
Like,
SOS.
sent her like Instagram and then email.
Carrier pigeon.
And I was like, I'm not gonna be fine. And then I was fine, because I had to like carry on until like it was time.
Yes, and I think I did have a cancellation. That's why I always say to people,
then you did
always
have a
message me, because
cancellation.
someone will cancel if you're meant to come.
And
yeah.
I don't remember, it was like raining, and it was like just a vibe.
Cozy.
Like it was like meant to be. But
Totally,
so
yes.
I can relate.
Yeah, and I remember, timing is everything, people. Like, I can't stress this enough. If someone cancels on you, if you're not feeling well, don't go that day. Like, do not force anything. Everything is divine timing. Cynthia reached out to me about 5 weeks ago and said, Sara, I'd love to have you on my podcast. Are you free over the next few weeks? And I actually said, Cynthia, we're about to enter Mercury retrograde. This is not a good idea. Let's do it when Mercury retrograde ends. And thank God we did.
Thank God.
God knows what would have come out of our mouth.
And then literally the next day, things started to hit the fan for me. And I was like, wait.
Yeah.
Actually, I could not have been in a clear
Absolutely
head.
not. I would have been speaking in riddles.
Yeah, and and from you saying that, I gave myself permission as well with other people to kind of, when I wanted to do other episodes, to be like, actually, can we like hold off and do it like more later on? Whereas I think a lot of the times I also get in this, I hate disappointing people, so I always feel like, oh, I've got to like turn up even if hypothetically I'm not feeling well.
It.
But
Yeah. So the timing, and I'm so glad we waited, because I was not on good form the last few weeks, but that's okay. And so saw that psychic lady. She cancelled on me, and I remember being like, that's it, I'm done. I was like annoyed, because I didn't, at that time, I wasn't like, everything happens for a reason. I was very like, victim, living in my like victim mindset. And anyway, she reached out to me a few months later, and she was like, Sara, I really need you to come. I promise I won't cancel. I'll give you a free session. She lived like a few hours away, or like an hour and a half away. I'll give you a free session, but you need to come this week. And I was actually in a better headspace then. Like, to be honest, when you're in the thick of the emotions, it's actually not good to see someone, because no matter what they say to you, it's probably not going to absorb, because you're in the like thick of it. You're in the trenches. So I always like to say to people as well, because sometimes they'll message me, I've just gone through a breakup, I really need you. I'm like, let's not rush it. Like, when I have a free time, it'll be the right time, because sometimes you need to process it, and you need to, you need a minute to integrate. So I was in such clearer mindset, and I got there. I'll never forget. She had like this witchy house. She had spider webs everywhere, and she like looked like Morticia. And she was really cool. Like, I loved it. I love going to, practitioners like that. I'm like, oh, let's talk to spirits. And I never forget, I went in, and she just started talking. She didn't ask any questions. She just would look around the room. She was glazed over, completely vacant, talking to spirits, looking around. She just started rattling off my life, like everything that had happened that past year, like all the kind of traumatic things I'd been through, why they happened, things about such specific things. She talked about my future. She was like, and I hadn't even thought, really, Sydney wasn't on the cards anytime soon. And she was like, all I see is the Opera Bridge and Opera House and the Harbour Bridge. She was like, you're definitely going to live in Sydney. And it kind of like, when she said that, I planted that seed, and I was like, yeah, like my body was like lighting up. And then she started coughing. She like couldn't breathe. She was coughing. And she was like, oh my God, I've got a man behind you, like a spirit. He's coming, but he's very confused. He's like he's almost like skeptical of me. He wants to talk to you, but he's like, who is this gypsy woman? Like, because my nonna was like Italian, very like old fashioned religious. And this was against his like religious way, he was just like, psychics, what's going on? And she welcomed him gently, and she was like, I've got Sara. And I told him, no, you can come through. And she spent the next 2 hours speaking. She almost shapeshifted into him. So some mediums do that, where they will blend into the spirit. She changed her voice. She was talking in his accent in Italian. She described exactly what he looked like, his name. She named every member of my family. He spoke to me through her for 2 hours. I sat there. I was weeping the whole time. It was just such a profound moment in my life, because he said this one line to me, and I know I spoke about this on my podcast, but it's just something that I love to tell people. He just said to me, and he said it in his Italian accent, he's like, no worry, you worry, like, stop worrying, you worry your head, like, it's all going to be, stop worrying. He's like, I'm with you, like, it's all going to be okay. And out of everything he said in that 2 hours, that one line stuck with me. And I remember I moved to Sydney after that. And I had moments in Sydney where, like, I'd feel alone, or, when it was COVID, I was away from my family, or you'd have those low moments of like, am I ever going to get another relationship again? I don't know, you just,
of course,
or I'm hungover and I'm like, having a mentee B. And I would always feel him around me, and I would always talk to him. And I never forget him just saying, stop worrying, like in his Italian accent, you're going to be absolutely fine. And that is just something that, I took and ran with. And that's all it takes sometimes. And I never felt alone after that. That was kind of reaffirmed all of my beliefs as a child of like, there is a spirit world out there. It was stuff that skeptics can totally question it. But she didn't know one thing about me, this lady. She didn't even have social media. All she knew was my first name. There's no way she could have known my nonno's name. There's no way she could have spoken in his accent, said one-liners that he would say. It was just, it was so magical. It was magic. And that's what I like to hope to bring into other people's lives now, because it's those moments of hope that keep you going, and those moments of unconditional support, because so many people do feel alone. And I love to just remind everyone, like, you are not alone. Yeah.
It's really, I feel like even from this, like everything that we've spoken about, it's like, at the core of it, everything is just love.
Yeah.
Love and faith and compassion. But like the base of it, of like, I feel like being a human and existing and being in this realm is just like, it's love.
Yeah.
And I think in some ways that's what we're all searching for. And obviously that can be changed into other things when it comes to like power or ego. But at the purest like form, it's just like, love.
Yeah, love and self-love is the biggest one,
Yeah.
So after that I moved to Sydney with my job, worked, COVID hit, and then it wasn't until I went back to my job, wasn't feeling it. I was like, this doesn't feel right. I met my partner after the lockdowns, and I remember speaking to him and just being like, I don't think my soul is meant to be in a corporate job. Like, I just know it deep in my bones. I want to live a slow life. I want to live a soft life. I want to do something creative. I would always bring my tarot cards to work, and I would do readings on everyone, and I would do astrology readings on all my friends. So in COVID, so I always was like, if someone asked me, what is your passion outside of your job? I knew then, because I had spent that time in COVID understanding myself, and I was like, this is what lights me up. Like, without a shadow of a doubt, I could do it all day, every day. I would do it for free for people. And then there would always be a little voice at the back of my mind that was like, I wonder if you could do this as a job. But my ego mind would immediately shut it down and be like, how would you make a living doing tarot cards? Like, what do you mean? And it wasn't until I continued in that job, I was resisting. Had this gut feeling of like, you're not meant to be here, but I was resisting it because due to fear of like, what would I do?
What does resisting feel like for you?
To me, it feels like shutting off that gut feeling and pushing through discomfort. There's one thing about pushing through discomfort when you're like about to level up and do something scary or exciting, or it's like good for you, and you have that like scared, and you're trying to like build your confidence and work through it and conquer the fears. But there's discomfort where you're not vibrationally aligned with someone or something or a place or a job anymore, and you shut it down and ignore it and keep going. Look, again, there's no right or wrong. I did that. I shut it down and I kept going because I was like, Sara, stop over exaggerating. Just just shut up and work. Like, that's what everyone does. Who knows what could you possibly do creatively?
And also, if something had at that, point in time being your dream job, but then it's like shifted, it's very hard to like
to accept that.
That and be like, wait, I've evolved. Like that, that served me at that time, but this reality now, it's different.
Yeah. And our ego mind is always going to want to hold on to the safety because it doesn't want us to level up or get out of our comfort zone. So my head would tell me, just push through. This is where you're meant to be. And it wasn't until something happened at work one day that was, I just remember going home in tears and saying to Will, I cannot do this anymore. Like, I was a broken woman. And I just remember being like, I actually can't even push through even if I wanted to. Like, I'm done. I had reached my absolute limit. And it was then I had another profound moment with another clairvoyant in my fragile state. I was like, I just need guidance. I need someone to tell me what to do, because I said to Will, I think I'm going to resign like in the next few weeks. But then my ego mind was going, you're over-exaggerating. It's not that big of a deal. You got upset for no reason. Maybe just give it another month. All these, all the low vibrational thoughts that were trying to stop me from moving onto my highest path. So I booked in with this clairvoyant lady. Again, it was just this serendipitous. My friend had passed on this lady's number. She was like, I've had the most incredible session with this lady. Message her. She's quite booked out though, so you might not get a session for a while. She was over Zoom in New Zealand. Message her. She was like, I've actually got an opening tomorrow at 6 a.m. So it was right before I was about to start work. Logged on and I hadn't said a word. But I was so fragile. I was broken. I had been like crying all night. I was a mess. And she just looked at me and she was like, whatever job you were in right now, you need to resign. I remember her word for word yesterday. She was like, she was like moving forward on the computer. Yeah, she was so brutal.
Yesterday.
She was so brutal. She was like, I'm not going to sugarcoat this, love. She was like, you? And she was like she was like, your guides are literally pushing me. She was like, and she was crying. She was like, it is so uncomfortable for you right now because they're pushing you out. You're not meant to be there. And I always think about this when you think about it. If you're not meant to be somewhere, then obviously you're going to feel off about it, because if you felt good about it, then you'd stay there and then you'd stay in this like mediocre life. So obviously those anxious feelings is a compass, but we see it as something wrong with us. It's negative. I'm going to push it down and ignore it. And so I needed her to tell me that. And I was just nodding and crying. I was like, oh my God, I felt so seen, so validated. She was like, you need to resign like yesterday. She said, your spirit team is making you so uncomfortable for you right now because it is pushing you out and you need to listen. She was like, your hands aren't even on the steering wheel. You are being so divinely guided. Let go. But she said, you need to resign. I'm not joking, like today. And she said, you are going to be a spiritual healer, or whatever she called it. She was like, you are not living in your truth. She said, you need to be doing something spiritual. You're going to be a psychic medium. You're going to heal people with your hands. You're going to work with energy. She said, don't worry about what it looks like, what practitioner you're going to be called. Don't label yourself. Because again, my ego mind, my like control freak was going, oh my God, what course should I do? What would I be? Will I be a kinesiologist? Will I be this, that? And she was like, no. She was like, stop. She was like, you're wigging. You're in that control survival mode. She was like, this is nothing to be made sense of. Like, this isn't going to make sense to you. You need to let go, but you need to close that door for this new one to open. And I had to resign. I resigned then and there. I remember saying to Will, getting off that session, and it was like this fog had cleared from my life. I never felt so clear. And I was like, and it was like that session with my nonna, where like, even though I didn't know what exactly was happening, I felt so divinely guided because my spirit team had told her, we've got her. Like, her hands aren't on the steering. She's good. Like, she was like, just follow your heart. Do courses that light you up. Just follow what makes you happy. It'll all work out. She said, and you're not meant to know the whole journey right now. You're not meant to have all the answers. The beauty is in the journey, and it's going to take you on this path that you don't even know.
I know. Yeah. Everyone always says that. It's not the destination, but it's the journey, the discovery.
Is. Yeah.
But then I feel like our ego self, or like our human self, comes into play where we're like, but what do you mean? Like, I'm sitting in the car and I'm driving, but I don't know where I'm driving to.
I need a destination.
Like, I need to know like where I'm going, and I feel like I have that battle so much.
And I lived my whole life such a control freak. I would have everything planned down to the T, because again, it was just like a survival mechanism of like, it made me feel in control. It made me feel worthy and validated. And so by her saying that, I was like, what do you mean? No plan? That was like blasphemy to me. But I did it in that moment. I was just like, what have I got to lose? I know I can't be in this job anymore. fuck it. The worst thing that could happen is I go back to full-time work if I try this thing on my own. And so, yeah, I literally resigned. And that was when my whole journey began. And that was.
What was it like when you first started like studying to be like an energy healer?
Yeah.
Or just be within that realm and, you know, finding out all this like this different world that you had kind of been interested or kind of peeking through the door, but to actually let yourself like delve into it.
Immerse myself. It was the most uplifting, fulfilling thing I've ever done. Like, even now, I do courses like every few years. Again, it's my like curious Gemini. I love to learn. And when I'm learning about something that I'm passionate about, it's just like time doesn't exist. You know, when you're doing something you love so much that time stops. And I remember I started with a Reiki course just because I was super drawn to Reiki and I had always wanted to try that. And I remember in that course being like, this is my passion. This is my truth. Like every cell in my body was lit up, every fiber of my being. I remember not wanting it to end. Like, I was so sad when it was over. We were learning about tarot and reading minds and connecting to the dead and clearing chakras. And I was like a kid in a candy store, and it was that inner child magic that was just being reactivated within me. Oh, I look back on that time so fondly. And I remember doing course after course after course. Then after like a year, I was like, okay, I should probably start seeing clients, because I'm the type of person, I was just getting obsessive, and I was like, I could just keep studying forever. And I still do courses all the time now just to keep upskilling. And when certain modalities appeal to me that pop up in my life and I'm drawn to them, I always know that it's like another tool to add to the toolkit. But yeah, that was a year of study. I did like a Reiki, a kinesiology, a psychic medium school. Because the psychic medium stuff, I didn't expect. And that was why that lady said to me, it's going to be different to what you expect. Because I was like, maybe I'll just be a Reiki practitioner.
Yeah, you didn't expect
I couldn't speak to spirit. Yeah, I didn't know that. I mean, everyone has it.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that would be probably my main, you know, like when you come for sessions with me, the energy healing is not the main part of it. It's the messages that come through for you. And that is hands down my favorite thing in the entire world. Like just reading people, connecting to love, like connecting to people's loved ones and giving them that comfort and that hope and that guidance and that support that I got that time when my nono came through. Oh, truly, there's nothing more fulfilling. Like, especially when someone is like, I don't feel them around, or I feel like they've left me, when they come through and they say something so specific, like, you know, they're talking about a piece of jewelry they gave you, or they'll say something so random. I'm like, why are they showing me like an orange frog? And then we're like, oh my God, they had a toy of that when they were younger, you know, just something so beautiful. That is like the most beautiful thing I could ever imagine. And that's my favorite part of my sessions, the psychic medium aspect. And I never thought that I would do that. So I think that's why the beauty of being so open, it led me down that path. And I do love the energy healing side of it as well, but marrying the two, I think, is like just so beautiful.
I remember, it's so funny, when I first came to see you, I was like laying on like the bed thing that you set up, and you go, I'm just gonna touch your head, and I'm gonna say, what is Cynthia thinking of today? Like what's on Cynthia's mind? And I was literally like laying there, and like my left knee, for some weird reason, just started like tingling, and it started kind of like hurting, and I didn't even know why, but it wasn't even like I was like moving my leg or anything. And then you were like, oh, this is random, but like something about your left knee. And I literally
That's right.
I literally was like,
you're reading my mind.
And I was like, what the hell? And every time like I've spoken about you to friends, I say that encounter.
Yeah.
It just had like I just was like, it was crazy because it was so specific.
Yeah.
And then I remember in our session at that point in time that I was doing a lot of cord cutting to just like, I think something that I've always struggled with is that I always, whether it's like, you know, places, things, people, whenever like I experience something beautiful, that in some ways I really just want to hold on to it and I want it to last forever. And so then when things, you know, end in whatever capacity, it's always like really, it's like heartbreaking. And like our last session and even this session that we did recently, we did like a lot of like cord cutting. Could you explain to us like what that is and kind of how we're able to use cord cutting to help us just kind of like, you know, step into
Our power.
our power.
Yeah. I love doing cord cutting because often it's subconscious. So people will say, yeah, but I've gotten over my ex, or like, I don't, you know, I've moved past it. But subconsciously, there's still that energetic cord, and it attaches to our solar plexus, which is our life force energy. It's our confidence, it's our power, it's our inner spark. And when we have cords attached, it drains us, like, you know, literally like a battery draining us. And so I love to do the cord cutting so we can call back our power. And often when you do these cord cutting rituals, I've done them so many times on myself. I do them in sessions all the time. The person you were cutting the cord from will reach out to you. I shit you not. I remember doing it from this guy that I dated once. And for some reason, I was like, I thought I moved past that. And then I had a dream one night and he popped up in a dream. And I remember being like, that is so random. We only dated for a short amount of time. And I was like, why am I dreaming about him? And I was like, okay, there must be some unresolved trauma that I suppressed around that situation. So I did a cord cutting around that. And I hadn't seen him for 2 years. Bumped into him that next week. I was like, you cannot make this shit up. And that happened to you as well.
Literally happened.
You voice noted me. You were like,
I
Sara,
know.
I just heard from that person.
Yeah.
It's because they can feel. So when we have this cord, right, they can feel the dynamic that they subconsciously have the power over you. And when we cut that cord, they can feel it energetically. And that's why they reach out, because they're like, oh, hang on, I don't have the power anymore. Let me weasel my way back in. And so, yeah, cord cutting is so powerful. It just, whether it's an old relationship, whether it's an old version of yourself, whether it's a place, a friend, a workplace, you know, anything that we hold on to from the past, any trauma that we haven't resolved lives in that cord, and all it does is just drain our soul and drain our life force energy. So I love to.
That's interesting. Does it like drain us? Because I feel like I've heard that before, but then because we live in such like the physical realm that sometimes it's hard to like see the spiritual realm, even though I guess we're not supposed to see it. That's why it's like spiritual. But like, how does it like drain us?
Because you're giving your power away, like, because you don't fully feel that you've let go. And when we don't let go of something, whether it's that, you know, person that we did that cord cutting from for you, they were still on your mind. And when they're on your mind, you're giving your power away to them, because that's precious time that you could be using to move forward in your life. But you're reminiscing on the past and you're ruminating. And there's nothing wrong with it. You know, it's totally natural. But in order to fully be free and move onto your aligned path, you must cut that. And it's all an energetic cord. Like you said, you know, you can't see it, but you can't deny that when they reach out to you, when you cut that cord, it is insane. Like, you know, it's magic. It's like, it happens. I can't describe to you the amount of women that I see for sessions, and men who will text me a day or a few days or a week or a few weeks after the session going, you wouldn't believe I bumped into them. And what they texted me randomly, and they haven't texted me in months or years or whatever. And what I say to that is the universe giving you closure and testing you to whether you really did cut that cord. And so a lot of my clients will go, oh, does that mean I should rekindle things? Is that why they've reached out? And I go, no. It's the universe literally handing you on a platter, being like, okay, we cut the cord energetically, but we have to integrate that into real life. And there's no better way to do it, to put them in front of you. And I remember bumping into that guy that I dated, and it was this beautiful closure, because I left that encounter going, oh, I'm so done with that. Whereas if you leave feeling still a little bit attached, maybe there's just a little bit more to go, and we've got to go a bit deeper as to why you're still holding on to it.
Deeper!
Yeah, or you're just like, you get stuck in the same cycle kind of thing. So yeah, it's honestly mind-blowing the amount of times that happened, is because we have this trauma bond with people as well. We have trauma bonds with people from our past. And unless we cut them free, they can live on, they can subconsciously dictate our reality without us knowing. And it's like, you know, circling back to what I said about our inner child, if we don't heal those wounds, they are at the driving seat, and they dictate our habits, our subconscious impulses and behaviors, and maybe habits that we're not totally proud of. That's just our wounded past selves or cords driving that force. So in order to us to fully step into our worth and authenticity, we just have to break free from the shackles as much as we can from the past.
How much of it do you think, when, like, just in terms of living, is like destiny, and how much control do you feel like we actually have in our lives? Obviously, like, I think in the past 2 years for me, like the thing that's really been coming up is to just like work on my internal state and like, you know, and being able to like self-soothe more. But then I feel like I've had so many just like things happen where I go, like like sometimes it feels like I actually don't have like control over like how things like unfold, and sometimes it feels like when I try to, I don't know what the word is, like intersect or like try to like, you know,
Yes.
control
the narrative.
but it's like you don't have control. But how much of it do you think is destiny and how much of it
I feel that control is an illusion that we give ourselves to feel worthy, validated, you know, in control, I guess. There's no other word to describe it. But I feel like with destiny, I think like certain partners and soul contracts and people that we meet is destiny. And I think either way, no matter what decision we make and what path we go down, it's always going to lead us to them to learn those lessons. I don't think we can avoid things like that. And I think big milestones in our life, like career paths, and unless you totally shut off and don't listen to absolutely any intuitive nudge at all your whole life and you live in a complete, you know, completely blocked, then maybe you're not going to ever fulfill your true destiny. But I do feel like the big milestones are laid out for us. And when, you know, before our soul comes into this earth, we meet with like a board of karmic masters, and they decide what our life's going to be and what lessons we didn't learn in our past life that we need to kind of learn in this life. This is just my interpretation, and you know, you can believe how you see it. But basically we choose the soul contracts and people that are going to come into our lives to teach us the lessons that we need to learn to grow. And that's why not everyone needs to be permanent, whether it's a friend or a relationship, a romantic relationship. We are both of our souls agreed to meet each other in this life to help each other grow and learn, you know, whether it's a toxic ex that makes you realize your worth, send gratitude to them, because you wouldn't be in your light that you are now without them. And so I think with destiny, we have free will. So you can choose. I don't think there's one set timeline. I think and this is me getting like super woo-woo and deep, but I think time isn't linear and we exist on multiple realities at the same time. And when we make a decision that is based on our intuition or high vibration, we jump timelines and we jump to their higher outcomes. So I feel like there's all different outcomes. So say you have a decision to make with work. You can either not take the job, you can take it. There's two different outcomes and two different timelines. So whichever one you take, you're going to either move into a bit of a lower timeline and learn a lesson, and maybe it'll bring you back to the higher timeline, or you take the higher road, and that is the path to the destiny. So what I feel when I was younger is I don't feel I was living my destiny as such, because I was stuck in the same repeating loops. I was stuck in the same patterns, low self-worth, abandonment, you know, issues, not knowing who I was, survival mode, you know. Now I feel like I'm living my destiny because I follow this beautiful golden thread of life. My life is just one big synchronicity. I have obviously rough plans, but I just follow my gut. Sometimes I'll just be walking down the street and I'll be like, I need to walk into that bookstore, or I need to walk into that cafe because there's a little nudge, and I do it, and I start having a conversation with the girl that works there. And then she ends up booking a session with me. And then, you know, it's just like this beautiful tapestry of life. We are all so connected. And I think the more of us that can tune into our intuition and follow our heart, I feel like that is your path to destiny. When we resist that and we go with our head, or we make erratic or impulsive decisions, or we force things, then I feel like we are just choosing a lower vibrational timeline. I do believe, though, that there's just lessons in that, and we end up learning the lesson and getting back to our destiny. So I do feel like there's, if that makes sense, like there's always this beautiful golden path, this golden thread that's weaved for us before we were born. And do I think every single thing is planned out? No, because again, we've got free will, and I think we can make quote unquote wrong decisions or right, depending on, you know, whether we learn a lesson or whether we level up and continue on our path. But yeah, I think we all have our soul's blueprint, and we all have the reason, and that you will have the karmic lessons that your soul chose to learn in this lifetime. And that's why sometimes I feel it's so important to make peace with the past and with the challenges. And for example, you know, the toxic ex, or the narcissistic manager that was so mean to you, that crushed your spirit, or your emotionally unavailable parents that you were born into, your soul chose that. to level up and to grow and to break the cycle and to use that darkness to turn it into light. And I feel like if you can look back on all those times with gratitude and peace, and I feel like this is almost like a channeled message now for whoever's reading this. I feel like whoever's listening to this, take what resonates and leave what doesn't. But you must make peace with the past. You must forgive yourself and others. And forgiving doesn't mean forgetting, but forgiving means choosing freedom over fear. And I think the challenges that we've been through, you know, our soul was born into our parents. We had no choice in that. So stop resenting, you know, the resentment is just making you sick. Use that as power. Use that as, I don't want to be like my parents. So when I have kids, I'm going to be the most amazing mother, and I'm going to break that cycle, that generational cycle. So yeah, I think that's been something huge in my life, is like, that's how you move from victim to creator, is when nothing, all those things I used to be like, why do I have these childhood wounds? Or like, why did that person do that to me? Or that was, you know, I was so hard done by. I actually think the people who have the hardest paths or the most suffering or the most traumas or whatever you want to call it have a higher calling. And you are able to hold so much more light for people and meet people where they are and have compassion, you know? Like, if I hadn't been through so many things that I have, I wouldn't be able to meet my clients where they are with that heartfelt energy and with that compassion. And you know, you're the same. I feel like the light that you bring to people's lives, it's like you need that darkness to shine brighter in your light. I feel like that was just a full channeled message. I don't even know what I was saying then.
No,
so I really
that.
hope that resonates with whoever was a little gift from the universe, a little reading.
No,
but,
that felt so perfect, guys. As you were like speaking, I was like, I feel like that 100% just like encompasses everything.
Totally,
that
like
we've been like speaking.
Yeah,
about.
You can't change the past. Making peace with it will set you free. Totally. Your freedom is on the other side of like letting that go. Yeah.
I love that.
Beautiful.
Well, I always love to end the podcast with asking everyone the same sets of questions.
Yes, love this.
Okay, if you were at a dinner party and you could invite 2 people, living or dead, who would they be?
Oh my gosh. Okay. Princess Diana. I feel like I'd love her.
Oh my god.
Do you love her?
Yeah.
She's so beautiful. I would love to just sit down and chat to her.
Yeah.
She's so
like,
such an inspiration.
ethereal.
Yeah. And maybe just like a celeb that I love, like someone funny who yaps a lot. I'm trying to think who would have good chat. Maybe like Emma Chamberlain. I love her. And just another fellow Gemini podcaster that I absolutely love.
I think Emma's a Gemini, you're a Gemini,
yes.
And Princess Diana, I think she was a Libra.
Yes, I love me a Libra. The air signs, I get along with air signs really well.
Yeah. Okay, if you had one day to live, what would be your last meal?
Oh my gosh. Okay, my last meal would be, I speak about this all the time because I talk about my death row meal, like if I was on death row, but I usually have like an entree, a main and a dessert.
Love.
Should I do that?
Yeah.
Okay, I feel like my entree would be potentially like, I'm actually going full Italian vibes here, but like an eggplant parmigiana or something. I love that. My main would actually probably be some sort of pasta as well. Maybe like a truffle ravioli or something that with a side of hot chips.
Oof.
And my dessert would be like a sticky date pudding or something really decadent. I think that's it basically.
Oh my God.
But I think about this all the time and I ask people, I love asking people like about their favorite food. So I love that question.
What's one piece of advice you've been given that like impacted you?
One piece of advice.
They were very like
No, that's fine. I feel like I've given so many in this episode, haven't I? I don't want to repeat the same thing. One piece of advice would just be that just going back to what I said before, if you're following your heart and your gut, you can't fail. Because I think a lot of us, the fear creeps in, but when I put that lens over everything, it keeps me going, even when I am scared. Yeah.
I love that.
Thank you.
And what's one piece of advice? Obviously, I feel like this whole session has just been like such beautiful messages, but to kind of like leave our listeners with.
I would say something that's coming to me actually, and I feel like this is a message that whoever's listening to this as well needs to hear, because I can hear spirit in the back of my mind telling me to mention it. I know a lot of people think, how do I start my spiritual journey? Or like, how do I be spiritual if I'm working in corporate or if I'm part of the rat race of life? And what I would say is, I think start with the fact that spirituality needs to look a certain way, because it doesn't. And you don't have to have some crazy altar or journal in the mornings or have some woo-woo ritual. And you can if that's what you want to do, and that's amazing. But to me, it's the embodiment every day. It's mindfully drinking your morning coffee. It's the way you speak to yourself in the mirror. It's maybe taking a deep breath, a deep belly breath before a meeting or an email. It's those micro moments to bring us back to ourselves. It's those sacred moments that are the ritual. And I feel like choose things that light you up, find things that light you up. Nature, laughter, being with friends, cooking, baking, singing, dancing. That is your soul's language. That is the practice. And I feel like spirituality, you don't need to escape your life to be spiritual. Your life is the practice and you are the practice. And being present, all you have to do is be present. And that is it to me. That is what spirituality is. It's not outside of ourselves. It's a remembering of what we already know is within us. And it's just finding the little joys in the day, being grateful for being alive and for taking another breath, because we don't know when our last breath is, if we're getting really deep here and a bit sad and morbid. But that is something that I live by 100% of, like, no matter what I'm feeling, even if I'm having a day where I'm struggling, just how blessed am I to get another 24 hours on this earth? And whether it's just listening to the birds chirp outside, or having a beautiful conversation with a friend that lights them up, or, you know, giving someone a hug, that to me is spirituality in its essence. And I'll leave it with that. We're going to cry now.
I'm dead. Thank you so much for
You're
coming
so welcome. That was so nice as well. And you know, something I said to myself this year was, I want to be able to reach more people, and I didn't know what that would look like. So when you reached out, I was really grateful for that. And using my voice has helped me conquer a lot of fears of being heard, but being seen is still something I struggle with. So I feel like doing this is also very cathartic and healing for me as well. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much.
Welcome.
Thank you guys for listening. Bye, guys.
Bye.